Okay, I will go ahead and call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order on February 22nd at 6:02 p.m. This is purpose of this is budget workshop number 2. Pat, did you have a plan to kick
Yeah,
this?
I have a plan.
Okay, I'll hand it over to you then.
Okay, so we're gonna start with Anne. Is she still here? She was here a minute ago.
Sorry.
Did we lose Anne?
Oh, she's here.
She's there.
She's there.
I don't know where
I'm
she's
here.
not on my,
She's
oh, there
muted.
she is.
That's
I'm
why.
sorry,
Okay,
Anne.
well, maybe not. There you go.
Upper left. I'm sorry. I lost you for a second. Anne is gonna start and just give us where we are right now. There's been a couple of changes and updates since last week.
So we had some savings with the lock-in of oil. And we know that we have, Mary, did we confirm that we have a 4th student? Because I never heard from Courtney.
There is a 4th student, yes.
Give me 1 second then, and I will make that change. And I can tell you, so it's about a $5,000 savings for the oil,
Woohoo!
That's
which,
so
you
great.
know, well, yep.
We'll take it.
And then she had those transfers, Anne.
She never gave them to me.
Okay.
What is this about? Is this the high school students going?
Correct. She
Mhm.
found she found another student, but she found several transfers from one school to another that were actually lesser in cost.
Okay,
So it seemed like it would balance it out.
okay. So next, what we're finding now is that because students are hearing from their receiving high schools, it's changing things up. So for example, we had one student who did not get into Immaculate. We're confirming that before we make changes in the budget, but that means we now have to pay for that student at Chapag.
Okay.
And then we have another one in a private school who are not sure if they got in either. So those students who go to either Immaculate or private schools, which Immaculate is a private school, they're not in our budget unless they had some special education costs. So we're trying this week to pin that down as best we can and make those changes. So where are
And we
we
had-
now without the students, Anne?
With the one that is definitely
One that's
in
definite, yeah.
11th grade. We are at our pre-K to 12 budget is at 4.54. After grants, so our budget request is at 4.83. So we've,
Explain that to me. Why is the percentage going up after grants? If that's supposed to
because
reduce
we're losing grants.
Well, okay,
So,
comparing
you know,
that.
those COVID grants are going away, which then makes our percentage change go up. So
Got
it's
Right.
this quirky thing when it comes to revenue. If your revenue goes down, your percentage goes up. So,
Got it. That makes sense.
Because you compare year to year,
yeah.
So yeah, it is a very confusing concept. But yeah, that's
One
exactly
ESSER
right.
that still continues, right? We have one ESSER left, or are we done?
One partial ESSER. We have ESSER 3, and we, I believe, only have about $14,000 budgeted for next year.
Okay.
Okay, we'll come back to Anne when we're ready, but I wanted to invite Renee to give an overview of special education.
Hello, good evening. I just want to say, broad speaking, in terms of special education, there aren't many significant changes from last year to this year. So I'm kind of highlight, just a few and try to answer questions based on those. If anything should come up tonight that I'm unable to answer in this session, of course, I will follow up with you. But I just want to highlight the change in paraeducator increase. You'll see that, that was a significant increase because we added two. We added two new paras, and those paras came in to basically, one, support our STRIVE program, which you've been hearing a little bit about, that we want to, a pilot program to start to support our middle schoolers with a flex kind of middle school program there. But also the para increase is to offer additional support for some of our students, our SPED students with some greater needs, and also to hopefully avoid outplacements. As Dr. Cosentino explained in her presentation, our goal really is to avoid outplacements and be able to support our students in-house as much as possible. So that's why we kind of defer to increasing the need for paraeducator support because, to be honest, that's cost savings, while still making sure our students get the support they need. So that's an increase there that you see, but that's kind of the backstory of why that increased.
So Renee,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, just for clarity for anybody who might be listening right when we're talking about the cost and those changes, increasing a para, that's a part-time position that's like $30,000 or $40,000 or something versus an outplacement which could be between $200,000 and $300,000 just makes sense, right? I mean, if we can use that to keep
Right.
Very good point, Matt, and you're spot on with that. Outplacements at a minimum cost really three figures, $100,000, because you're talking in addition transportation, which is another huge expense. When you're going to outplace a child, we are responsible for providing the transportation. So it's like not only keeping them in-house and utilizing our staff in-house to support, but also not having to spend that money on transportation to send them.
Thank you.
So you're absolutely right. So that is one piece. The other significant increase, you'll notice it was, I think, if I'm looking at it correctly, it's about a 1,400% increase with the SPED curriculum ask for that. But that's to where that line has increased so much, again, tying back to our hope to keep some of our needier students in-house. So I asked for that increase to basically make sure we obtain materials and supplies that we need to support our STRIVE program, as well as I would like to really open up a self-contained program classroom as well. Once again, with the hopes of keeping some of our neediest SPED students in the building and making sure they have their support. So that's why you'll see that significant jump in the SPED curriculum line there. Because if you're going to have a self-contained room, you're talking about needing very specific materials, furniture, again, curriculum that's really geared to what our students need. So again, in the hopes of outplacement, if we can support them and provide instruction in-house, but we're going to need the tools to do that. So that's the big jump there.
I also reduced Renee's budget. She did ask for $100,000.
I was getting to that next up. You're spot on. I was just going to say the next point is, yes, I did ask for roughly $100,000 for a SPED contingency. And that is in the non-public school line, you'll see. And that again was to support if in the event we do have a possible outplacement, as well as, if we go into mediation, with special education, mediations is something that's very real and happens. And we had a situation last school year that we had two cases that went to mediation and outplacements that were not accounted for in last year's budget. It happened after the budget passed, but we had to cover that expense. So I did ask for that $100,000, contingency to plan and prepare for that. Of course, my job and my work is to make sure those things don't happen, and we're supporting the students and hopefully don't get to that stage but it can happen. And I just feel it's responsible in a way to kind of put a contingency just in the event of that if we need it.
Renee, is that standard practice?
Typically,
The
yes.
contingency?
Yes, most districts, yes, absolutely, do have that built in, because again, yes, you're making sure you're trying to be responsible, supporting the students where they're, what they need, meet them where they're at. But again, you never know what will come down and, you know,
course.
what may lead to a mediation, or if the staff feels that an outplacement is the best the way to support a child, then that is a recommendation that I had to be responsible to make as a PPT.
Renee,
Great, thank you.
sorry. This may not be a fair question to ask, but if you have you looked at budgets past, and have you determined if we have had contingencies in the special ed line in past years?
I have not gone back in past years, many years, but I know, I believe last year for sure, and the year before, I did not notice that there was a contingency. But just from my experience coming from other districts, I know that's something common. And that's why I proposed that to Dr. Constantino when we were building the budget for next year.
Thanks.
And also drawing on the
Yeah, I
fact,
don't,
oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, Matt, I
drawing on
don't think historically we put it in there.
Right, you're right, exactly. And I was just drawing on the fact too of what did happen last school year after the budget passed. And we did have those two cases where we ended up with outplacement and mediation, and we weren't prepared for that. And if there aren't any further questions on that, I also want to highlight that there will be a shift in the number of special education students within the building. So the number of special education students on the pre-K to 8th grade will decrease dramatically. We have a large number of students graduating and moving on to the high school level. So we are fiscally responsible for them, yes, at the high school level. So all the SPED students, we will be responsible for making sure their services are contracted for and paid out through their prospective high schools that they choose. However, within the building, our numbers are going down of identified SPED students. So that again is driving the shift in our staffing needs, which I know was discussed in the prior meeting and previous presentations. So that's ultimately why we are restructuring our staff, our SPED staffing needs, and are shifting to introduce this 0.8 instructional coach and 0.2 SPED teacher model. And again, I'll be looking to restructure staff as well in the hopes of supporting that self-contained classroom and the STRIVE program within the building.
Okay, so it's a good time to do the shift then.
Exactly.
Right.
But with that, the good thing is, because we're trying to really work and restructure, the cost in terms of salary for the staff is not changing much because we're just restructuring.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Brian, you're on mute. Still, try again. We can't hear him, right? Okay.
No.
Can't hear you, Ryan.
Is it possible to put something in the chat?
One of the co-hosts, I'm not a co-host, but one of the co-hosts could send him a request to unmute, which will just pop a button up for him to click.
Oh, I think I just muted somebody. 1 second. Oh, yeah, yeah.
You just muted me.
I just muted you.
Renee, quick question for you.
She
I remember
muted me too.
in last
Can anybody
budget
make me a co-host?
I will. Sorry. Go ahead, James.
It's okay. The last budget workshop, that curriculum piece, which was a big expense for regular piece of it, is this a one-time expense as well to get the material that you need? Or am I comparing two different things? Does that make sense?
Yes, well, I apologize that I was unable, unfortunately, to make the last workshop. So I wasn't at the last workshop to hear exactly what was discussed. But to answer your question, this is going to be this huge expense for this coming school year. And then a lot of those materials, curriculum, items, furniture, pieces to set up the classroom, of course, will be something that I'm not looking to for the next school year. It'll be more at that point, more maintenance, more getting smaller items. If there's something outdated, maybe replacing it, but no, not that significant ask, that percentage increase again.
Thank you. That was perfect. Thank you.
If nobody else has any questions right now, maybe I'm not sure if this is the right venue to talk about PEEPs. And I bring that up because last year we were pitched on PEEPs, the PEEPs program, which is the extended day for some of the 4-year-olds in pre-K to help them and do some additional schoolwork. The idea there and what was
Ready
pitched
for
to us.
kindergarten. Yeah.
And for kindergarten as well?
Well, right. PEEPs is originally for the students who are at the age where they will be eligible to go to kindergarten in the fall. So
Right.
that's what it was a pilot designed for. So go ahead with your question now. I'm sorry.
So that was kind of pitched to us in terms of kind of long-term sped savings, right? Because you're kind of trying to get ahead of some of those reading issues and then math issues potentially, I guess, before they start by giving the students more time. Have you been able to evaluate the program and kind of determine if it's headed that way, if the work that they're doing in there and if the program itself is geared properly to achieve that goal? Or we're only, kind of half a year or a little bit more into this program. So I was kind of curious how that's going to play out in the future for us.
Absolutely. Well, PEEPs, yes, it's still being watched and being monitored and being observed, for lack of a better word. However, I think as a team, we do feel, and correct me, everyone else on the call if I'm speaking inaccurately, but we do feel that PEEPs is showing signs of success enough that we would want to move from a pilot mode to keeping it and maintaining it. So we are putting it on the table that PEEPs will remain in place for the upcoming school year, 23-24.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question, I think.
Can I
So,
ask some questions? So I'm just curious about the paras. So you have 13 paras now and you're going up 1 para in special ed, or are those paras all special ed paras, or are they general paras? Or I just was curious about that.
They are being utilized as special education paras.
Okay.
I know with paras, sometimes, year to year based on need, we move them and utilize them in different capacities, but generally speaking, our para educators are tied to students with IEPs and to support in classrooms where there are students with IEPs, so SPED students. So those additional paras that we have brought on board are, yes, tied to support students with special education needs.
And are those paras 1-to-1? Are they working with groups of children? So what is your number of special ed students to, what's the ratio of paras to special ed students?
If you're speaking specifically with the new ones that were brought on, those one is geared to work with a small group.
Okay.
Those students, and the other one, yes, is a 1-to-1 currently because of a shift in change in our special education population. And again, speaking to really trying to make sure we meet the needs of those students and avoid having to outplace or make other arrangements. So yes, to be honest with you, one is currently in a more of a 1-to-1 setting.
Does every section in the building have a para?
Do you mean every grade
Section?
level?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Okay.
No,
For
because
sure.
again, we're utilizing our paras really to be mindful and support the students with IEPs, and there aren't students on every grade level with IEPs currently.
Okay.
There are a couple, though, that are 1-to-1, not just the one new one, but there's another, I can think of another one that's 1-to-1. Am I right?
That's 1 to,
We have another student that requires a one-to-one, but
Oh,
he
but it's
is,
not the same
right, we
person.
split the para coverage. One of
Okay.
the challenges that we have, and I'm only jumping in here because I worked with Renee on the para scheduling with the change in our schedule in December. And I can tell you that the para schedule was the most difficult of the scheduling changes that we made. And a lot of that is because our paras are all part-time.
Oh,
So
they
we
are.
don't have
Okay.
any paras that are there for an entire day. So what we ended up doing is having to piece together coverage throughout the day. And it was challenging. It's challenging on a day-to-day basis, especially if we have a para who's out, to try to cover, because we're so thin with the coverage. They're utilized only for special education purposes in terms of placements, but that extends from pre-kindergarten all the way through 8th grade.
Okay, so so the 14 paras are part-time paras? Is that what you're saying? Or is it 14 full-time paras?
No, we only have part-time. There's nobody that works more than 29.9999 hours.
All right, that's okay. That makes, because I was like, each section must have a para, because I was trying to figure that out. I was like, how many sections do you have of classes? But now that makes sense. So it's really 7 paras that you're talking about. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Just
for
because of
clarifying
the constraints of the amount of hours that we can offer them. So I know it
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of bodies,
that.
but the
Yes,
amount of time they can work,
Yeah.
we only utilize them so much.
Yeah.
Plus
That-
they do recess and lunch duty,
And before
Okay.
and after school
before and after
duties.
school coverage.
okay,
And one para is in the library, media center.
Correct.
okay,
And that's why they don't have benefits.
okay. Yep, that makes, I understand now. Thank you for clarifying.
Ryan, you're back. You got questions?
Yeah, just a quick question for Renee. So how exactly do we determine that line of, who is in need of special education? Is it a standardized test? Is it, if the kid is failing in more than one subject? How do we figure that out and kind of place them?
Do you mean which students need an IEP and qualify IEP, or which students need paraeducator support? I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question.
So I'm just thinking, so you had proposed the separate classroom for special needs children. My question is basically, how do we determine who needs that extra help? And then, what if the needs of multiple students are all different across a large spectrum? Is it hard to, in that one classroom, meet everybody's needs and kind of bring them back up to where they need to be to get up to speed? Is that, that's my question.
That's a very good question. To be honest, part of the need for trying to develop this more, self-contained, smaller special education setting is because of the shift in needs. We had new students come in that kind of have come in with that profile already, to be honest with you. So again, we're trying to adjust to the changes that's happening within Sherman, Sherman is small, but it's shifting and demographics are changing as people kind of move in. So I am making sure that we develop a program and have a place to really support and a setting to support those students because they're coming in and moving in with this already in place. So I want to make sure that we are trying to do our best to set up a situation where we can support them in-house before saying, okay, Sherman does not have the resources to do this, let's outplace. So they're coming to us already with this IEP and this profile.
And so at the moment, how many children do we have currently, I guess, that would have an IEP that would go into that, separate classroom?
I would say right now, maximum, we were looking at 3, most likely 2. So very small, small group.
Okay.
But again, even with that 2 or at the max 3, if we're talking to outplace, We're talking at a
A
minimum.
lot of money.
$100,000 minimum.
Right. Right. Okay. I don't know why in my head I pictured like a classroom of, like 12 to 18 kids, and how are you going to meet the needs of all these children? Because most likely they're all different,
Absolutely.
math to science and trying to meet all those needs in one spot. It might be difficult, but I didn't
Very
realize it was such a small population. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the next topic and then we'll come back. If you still all right, Renee? Good. Okay, so comparison of the administrative teams. Do you have that information? Can you put it on up, either Karen or Ann? Are you working on it, Karen or Ann?
Karen, do you want to do it? Or
I'm
you want me
thinking,
to do it?
Anne, why don't I just give you, I don't have the sheet in front of me on this computer.
Yeah, I can't.
Try it now.
Okay.
There we go, nice.
Okay, good.
So,
You guys see it?
Ann put this together for us. This is a year-over-year budget comparison. So in 2021-22, you had a part-time superintendent, half-time, and a half-time principal. You had an assistant principal, director of pupil services, and a director of curriculum. This current year, and this is based on the budget, you have a 0.4 superintendent, 1.0 principal, 1.0 assistant principal, excuse me, a director of pupil personnel, and a director of curriculum. Now, we made changes to that. That was in the budget that from the 22-23 school year. This year, we are proposing for next year, and it's also this year too, what we're working under. But when we deal with budget to budget, that's how we're giving you the information. We have a 0.4 superintendent, 1.0 principal, a 1.0 director of pupil services, and then we'll have director of teaching and learning / AP as a new position. So when you look at the totals, we had 4.0 full-time equivalents in 21-22, 4.4 full-time equivalents in 22-23 in the budget. This is in the budget. And then 23-24, it's 3.40 full-time equivalents, which is, you could see $558,847,000, which is approximately, we should have given you this, almost about $65,000 in savings.
Thanks. Yeah, Matt, thanks, Pat, for pulling this together. Just a couple clarifiers, because I think I appreciate the graph. I think there's just some pieces of the puzzle. When we say benefits, right, we're not talking about health benefits. We're talking about other benefits that we used to budget for in salary adjustments, whether those were essentially extraordinary contractual obligations that we had to pay that weren't health benefits that were on top of salary. Am I right to say that's what the 28 and then the 16 is?
Correct.
And so when we're looking at 23, 24, just so that everybody has numbers to numbers, like that's straight salary. So our superintendent contract that we have, right, does not include health benefits. So there is just an automatic savings, not only in salary, but also in the cost of employment for a part-time superintendent.
Correct.
With respect to the principal, right, director of pupil, director of student support, director of teaching and learning, right, all those pieces of the puzzle, we essentially have 3 full-time administrators that are getting paid more, right, than their counterparts who had less experience. They are all, to my understanding, right, I'm assuming receiving benefits that are calculated as part of our benefit line. But net, right, all in, we're still saving money. The difference is we have less people, but we are compensating the people that we do have at a rate commensurate with their experience and education. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great. So just on the board side, I know that we're seeing benefits and just to clarify what that is those old lines where you would see position and then salary adjustment, right? And that salary adjustment depended on the individualized contract of the employee. Whereas I think it's my understanding now that we have a salary for administrators and there's a package of health benefits that they are eligible to receive outside of the superintendent, right? Who's waived those as part of the contract.
So just for clarity, thank you, Tim, those benefits that are in this line in 22-23 or 21-22 would have been our previous superintendent's benefits only. Is that right? Or is that the benefits for all the administrators then?
That was for all the administrators then.
Okay.
Right, and I think the word benefits is confusing, right? Just in this
Right.
context, right? So these are salary adjustments, right? That were categorized in the budgets as salary adjustments benefits, but they are not health benefits, right?
Okay.
Those are all-
Correct.
Great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's very helpful. Thank you.
And if we added up the health benefit cost for 21, 22, and 22, 23, we had budgeted, from what I understand, in 22, 23 for 4 positions to have benefits. In the past, in 21, 22, 4 positions had benefits, right? So I guess it's just important to distinction. We're going from 4 benefited positions on top of all these costs down to essentially 3.4, with one of those positions not carrying health benefits. So there is a net savings that is probably greater than $63,000. It might be helpful for us just in terms of, as we communicate with the public to break that down. I'm not sure if we can break out what that cost is and have
Sure.
the cost of health benefits in addition to that.
Do that.
But I think that just might be helpful for us in terms of communicating with our colleagues in town government and our neighbors in the community about really what the cost change was to the modification to the model, right? There's not only a cost impact, but there's also a educational impact, right? Which we've seen be successful, but there's a cost savings as well, which is important.
Okay, any other questions on this? No. Okay, Ann, you could take that down, please. The bus contract, I just want to let you know, I spoke to All Star on Thursday, and he said he'd get back to me. And I called again today. He still hasn't gotten back to me. So as soon as I have information, I will get back to you. And
Great. Thanks, Pat.
I think our next meeting is March 1st. It came out today, an invitation, so I will definitely have it. Hopefully, I'm gonna try again tomorrow. Hopefully, it gets back to me. Lunch
thank you.
counts, free and reduced information. And you have anything you want to share with that? I know Steve put together what we're spending on free and reduced.
No, I need to talk to Chartwells about how we are going about that. I need to see where they put that.
Yeah, but it comes to, I'm trying to see, I have it here.
There's 9 students. I think that's what the
Right,
question
there are 9,
originally
there are
was.
just,
Oh.
the question was how many students receive free or reduced lunch that we're paying for? And it's so far, it's 9 students. And it has cost us right now $1,997. So we've paid $2,000 so far for the 9 students. Which you would
Just-
pay regardless.
And just to be aware, that is a lunch calculated based on 1 lunch per day. It does not allow for things like snacks or additional purchases.
So I guess the premise of that question, right, was twofold. One, we have Chartwells because New Fairfield has Chartwells, and we had Airmark because New Fairfield had Airmark, and we're too small to bargain. So we basically, at this point, do whatever New Fairfield does. That's historically how we've done food service, given the adjacencies, right? They just treat it like a different thing. And we have historically not been part of the state or federal lunch program, which would provide funding for free and reduced lunch, but also come with requirements related to the type of food and all these things. I guess the question is, we're already kind of mimicking New Fairfield's program, who, from my understanding, is part of the state federal mandate. So is there any difference to what we're doing that we shouldn't be part of the federal program, which has been paying for free lunch and breakfast for every single student throughout the entire pandemic, which we did not take advantage of for some reason?
Right. We, at this point, our program runs very similarly to New Fairfield's, except we don't get any reimbursement from the feds because we're not in the National Lunch Program. Governor Lamont did say that he would pay for breakfast and lunch till the end of the year for anybody any school system that participates in the National Lunch Program, which we do not. I guess what we have to decide is if we want to apply to the state for the program. We have to go through a very arduous process, which we can do, and hope somebody bids for us. What I've heard from, a couple of people in Sherman, in the offices, and others who have worked here, they say that it's very hard to get anybody to bid for us because we are so small and we always run at a loss. So it's going to be very hard for, Chartwells or anybody to say, oh yeah, we'll take you on and we'll lose, $5,000 a month or whatever it is we'll lose. But if you want us to move forward with that, we certainly can do that. I could tell you that I was in New Fairfield when they applied. They had to go out to bid for every certain amount of years. You have to go out to bid. And they actually had to hire a consultant to help them do it because it was such a difficult, long process from the feds. But we can look into that.
I don't know if we need to. It was a
Yeah, I don't think so either.
point of, if there's
It's
money.
not my recommendation to do that because I don't think anybody is going to bid for us to lose money. I just can't imagine that's going to happen. And we have so many balls in the air that it's just another very big job to do.
Right.
Yeah, I think that it's responsible, right? I mean, we've had history about losing access to our building, losing access to our kitchen based on contracts that have been signed in the past. I think we may have town folk who are a bit leery about entering into those types of agreements anyway. So it's maybe we table it and talk about it in the future if we need to. But I don't think that it's probably something we need to waste time on right now.
I agree with that. I really do.
Right. So we're just in that vein, we're basically saying 25K is the number now and until we do something.
Well, that was the number that we used, the guesstimate as best we could. Now that we're selling snacks, maybe we'll
Listen, as I'm going to be the protective parent. The snack racket and the cafeteria line is good, but I understand, the pricing there. They can get very high, and while I encourage our food service program to make revenue any way it can, I understand what it is to be a younger student with access to snacks, right, and what that can do to your parent budget. But yeah, look, I think it is what it is. I just want to make sure that we're thinking about any and all ways to offset costs, and it's clear that we have thought about that one as much as possible.
And just as an FYI, they did put a limit on the number of snacks one child can buy at any time, just to offset the whole, grade level purchase.
Great. My wallet appreciates that. Thank you, because I know my daughter's an offender.
As is mine. I feel there was like a turnaround, like, hey friends, snacks, and the bill just kept rising. So.
It would be helpful, and I think I brought this up last time, to understand the data with what we're paying, because from what I remember of the agreement, it was like there's a set cost every month or 2 months that if we met that with the sales, then we were breaking even, but if we came up short, that's when we have to pay, right? So kind of understanding how close we're getting to that target. I don't know.
The gentleman from Chartwells, I forget his name. I could see him, but I can't remember his name.
James
He
Davis.
meets with us like every 2 months to go over, and he said he'd be happy to do it. So if we have one of our subcommittees, the whole board can come, but if a subcommittee wants to come, whether it's the finance committee or no, I don't know what other subcommittee could make sense to come. He's happy to come and go over, you know, the paperwork and exactly what we're buying and they're using and all of those things.
Okay, yeah, we'll look at that here in the future. Anybody else have any questions on that for the lunch or anything? If not, we'll keep on moving.
Okay, Anne, sent today, we started to use the Board of Education shared drive again. So on there, you'll find all the high school contracts. And you'll find the copier renewal. I believe I sent the copier renewal to you.
You
Yep.
did.
Okay, that's not up until November 2025. So we just have to kind of stick that out for a little bit.
Do we have a buyout option on that contract?
I don't know. We can look at it. It's usually very expensive to buy out in a copier contract, but we can look at it.
I think it's.
Well, I think the issue is that it's not functioning appropriately, right?
Well, look, I think in the last conversation that we had about this, the copy machines that we got via the Xerox contract were reduced costs, but just in terms of, at least anecdotally, what I have heard and my attempts to use the copy machine in frustration myself, like they're a little bit cumbersome, whereas the Ricos that we used to have were a little easier and faster. I think the contract that we have, as Pat mentioned, goes out to 25. But the buyout is for fair market value, which usually, you know, doesn't work out. But I think that the idea, you know, given the timing there and given the conversation that we're having about a potential building project, right, it would be to look at kind of where we need copiers in that plan, and then just think more strategically about not only procurement, but like, you know, having a plan in place before expiration to see if we can get a different quality machine and actually spend some time like looking at them and testing them out, as it were.
You generally also want to go for something that's a higher capacity than what you need. You know, a lot of these copier contracts, they sell you a lower copy, more machines, but a lower capacity, and they break over time. They become very bogged down with the amount of copies that come out of them. So, you know, you can consolidate and have less machines, but have a higher capacity and better quality machine. And in the long run, you can save yourself some money, but you can also save yourself some frustration with downtime.
There's a great company it's a local company that New Fairfield just started to use. And
Base
Bethel
Technologies.
uses Base Technologies. They are excellent. So
We've done 2 contracts with them.
yeah,
Bethel used them as well.
Yes.
they're wonderful. So you know, when we have the opportunity to look elsewhere, we definitely have a good lead.
But I will echo that the buyout on those contracts, especially because you're so far from the end of the contract, would be enormous expense.
Okay, so we make the best of what we have until we renew. We plan for renew, given that it seems our admin team has lots of copy experience. So check on that too.
And
Yep.
Honestly, I don't think they're the worst machines I've ever worked on. I mean,
They really are not as bad. They're not
No,
that
they're
bad.
not.
I can tell you,
No.
we had
Yeah, we worked
horrible.
on.
Okay,
Horrible machines in the
you know,
Fairfield.
this is me defending my complaining in the main office the other day when I was trying
Yeah.
to. complain,
Come see
and
me,
Courtney
Tim. I'll
said,
help you with your
All
copies.
right, so I can't use the copy machine. Anyways, okay. Great.
Those were the big areas that we were going to talk about tonight. So now it's up for questions, whatever you want to do to move forward.
Could we just talk through, and I know that in the budget, there's some shifts you know, with PE health, right? We're going from 0.5 to 0.6, right? It's PE health, right? Can we just talk through what those changes are so that we all have a full understanding and kind of understanding of?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Karen
Yep.
can do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that, Tim. So with our, if you look at our year to year, we currently have budgeted for this year a 0.5 health certification position. And when we went through our schedule change and reworked the schedule back in December, we made a small adjustment to that to bring it to a 0.6 position in order to cover the classes that we needed to have. The position right now, however, is only for health. And you know, the challenge with that is a lot of the method in which curriculum is delivered in the PE health area is a combined PE health wellness type program. It's more of a comprehensive program where health is taught within, or some of the topics of health are taught within the context of a PE class, especially at the elementary level. So what we're looking for is to modify that currently 0.6 position that's health only to be a PE health position, which would give us not only the ability to deliver that health curriculum within the confines of PE, but it would also allow us, one of the things that that we have really looked at with the schedule is trying to find ways to provide more access to PE for especially our middle school students. Right now, they only receive PE instruction once every 6 days for 40 minutes. So although we are one of the few schools in Connecticut that still have recess for a middle school recess does not take the place of a PE curriculum. That is a much more focused exercise and health and wellness time. So we would like to be able to offer this to our middle school students in particular more than once per 6-day cycle. We can't do that with a health certified person because they cannot cover the classes, and we don't have enough time in our one full-time position to meet both of the elementary and the middle school classes. So we're stretched as far as we can be with our one FTE position. So providing that 0.6 position to be more flexible by making it a certification of both PE and health gives us that ability.
And so
Does that make sense?
yeah, I'm following. But as a result of that, essentially what we're doing is having students in PE as part of the curricular day and physical movement more so than they are now.
Correct. And, you know, when you look at a comprehensive health and wellness program, a lot of the health components can be taught within the confines of the PE classes. It doesn't have to be a classroom-based health program. There are certain aspects of the health program that do still need to be taught in like a classroom-based, which is why we're looking for a PE health cert. The vast majority of PE certified teachers are PE and health certified. So having only a health certified position now just doesn't give us any leeway. They can only teach health.
Got it. And then are we confident that we can recruit for what is a dual certification in a 0.6 position, right? You know, is that a concern?
Well, I mean, it's always, whenever you're looking for part-time people, it can be a concern clearly, but I think that we're more apt to find a PE/health certified, a dual certified position. And we're going to do the best we can. I think that's really, whenever you're looking for a part-time position, you always run the risk that there might not be somebody available to fill that position. So we're going to have to see what happens once we post and see for recruitment purposes who we can get. I mean, I think it's, you know, we originally had hoped for a full-time PE health, second full-time PE health. That was one of the cuts that was made by this by Pat. So, you know, we recognize that we need 0.6 to cover the classes that we have. But would we have loved to have offered a full-time and been able to offer more PE? Of course, but these are the hard choices that Pat needed to make in conjunction with us. So given the choice, that was one of the areas that we cut.
But look, let me say, I appreciate the fact that you all have done essentially this budget 3 times now, right? And that you've kind of been through a round of presentations, and that Pat has gone and used her experience as a superintendent and as administrator to kind of say, let's pull this back, right? And I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that, you know, something like a PE health position that is really like our specials, like music, like art, STEAM, some of those things that are touching kind of broad spectrums of students throughout the entirety of the building, that we're making sure that we can kind of focus on that. And I know physical activity, and especially the delivery of our health curriculum, has been an important topic for the community and for parents. So just making sure that we're looking at, you know, resources across the board, and trying to focus on things that touch as many students as possible in those multiples of grade levels, as opposed to being focused on maybe one grade or a set of grades, is my only comment there.
Great. Well, any other questions on that piece? The rest of the
Yeah,
board?
quick question. So are we saying this question's for the kids? I'm representing the kids now, okay? Do they lose recess in middle school now? Because they
No,
got
we're not looking to take recess away,
All
but
right,
what we're
still
trying to
dodgeballs are
say,
okay.
yeah, what we're really trying to say is that recess does not take the place of PE. It does not take the place of the full comprehensive wellness program, which beyond even PE and health also incorporates SEL and a whole lot of other things that really should be delivered in a more comprehensive program. But no, we are not looking to take away recess
Thank you.
at this stage of the game. No. We have a beautiful playground. Why would we do that?
All right. Was there anything else, any other questions that board members had about the budget as it stands now? So I guess at this point, you know, I think that the next step is, you know, we don't have any other budget workshops slated until after our next meeting, where we would be voting to approve this budget. So do we have an opportunity between the now and then to send questions, or are we all feeling pretty comfortable?
Well, we have a board meeting March 1st, so next Wednesday. We have the board meeting, so.
We still do have the form open too, Pat.
we
If
still have the
anybody wants to
form
use the
open. People
form.
can ask questions, and we're happy to answer
Are there
questions.
questions? Have there been any questions submitted on the form at this point?
Not as of the last time I checked.
No,
Okay.
I know the budget committee has been working on altering the format a little bit. Are we going to be able to implement that for this budget cycle by then? Or I know that that's a lot of reworking by then. So I'm just kind of curious where that stands.
Ann and I are spending tomorrow afternoon working together on that process. So we'll be able to tell you end of day tomorrow, but I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think we feel fairly confident that we can get our heads together and make it happen.
Okay.
If that changes, we'll
Great.
tell you tomorrow.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess if you get there, if we can just circulate that, obviously, the board before.
Yep.
Absolutely.
As much time as possible for the next meeting, because, you know, the goal would be to, you know, if there's no other adjustments, approve this budget at the next meeting, because we also have our presentation to the Board of Selectmen following that meeting the following Monday. So I just wanted to make sure that we're either prepared for that, or if we have to make an adjustment with them schedule wise, that the more notice we have, the better.
Absolutely.
Right, just for clarity's sake, though, we're not gonna, if we want to make a modification or ask for a look back or say, hey, here's our numbers, now is the opportunity for us to frankly do that, just so we're all clear, right? Because the team needs the chance to kind of adjust or bring us some options. I personally have looked through this thing line by line, especially as you talk about format. I don't like the number, I'll be honest with you. But I think that if you go through it, right, there's a reason for every single expense. And absent making significant modifications to our staffing at this time, there's really not a lot of room to do that. Having said all of that, it would be helpful to us, I think, to know should we have a request from the Board of Selectmen acting as the Board of Finance to reduce our budget, and or if the taxpayers ultimately ask or reject the number, right, where we would go. So although there's pieces of a puzzle there and it's an uncomfortable conversation, I think we all need to be aware, if we can't proceed as proposed and as we may adopt at our next meeting, right, where would we make reductions, just so that we can be very clear about our choices and the choices that we did not make. I think that's an important piece that we have traditionally done, right, in the past, where we said, look, we've looked at this and these are the options that we have. They aren't good ones, but just so we can have an understanding of what it would be to reduce those numbers, and what the impact would be to the educational program, I think would be helpful, even if it's broad strokes.
Are you asking that question right now?
No, I'm asking for our next meeting, right? Like,
Okay.
to have some thought process there, just so that, at least I don't know if anyone else feels they want to like do that now. I am okay with, where do we end up? 4.87 after grants?
4.83.
A little lower, right? I just, again, I think that format changes, communication is important. And really, if you look at this budget, there's not a lot of room other than impacting our staffing or essentially not buying kids new Chromebooks that they need. Those are the big line items that I could find that were, here's where you could go. And I just think it's important for us as a board to understand that here's where we would have to go if we're asked for reduction. So as we're talking to our neighbors and we're talking to our colleagues in government, we can honestly say, listen, there's a reason why we're recommending this, because we don't think at this time making reductions to these programs areas is a good idea.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I mean, we've gone through this and we've looked. I don't think anybody likes having to, put forward an increase, but I think that for me personally, it's all pretty well justified. As much as I'd like to try to find those spots that we can make the cuts that make sense, we're either trying to take, like you said, staff away that we need just for the sake of making the percentage number different, or we're taking away much needed resources that we're trying to implement here to correct some of the issues with, student achievement that, we've been getting feedback for years that people in town aren't happy with. So, I go into the next meeting at this point feeling pretty comfortable with the way the budget stands, barring any big changes before then. So.
I agree. I think we kicked tires pretty hard last year, and I think that we've done that again this year. And what we have is appropriate.
Yeah, and some of this, increases is with the science of reading, and we have to make those, we are from the state have to make those changes in updating the curriculum, and I think the staff development, is a very key part. There has not been a lot of staff development, and it's very, it's very important, in the profession to be, current and learning new things and new teaching strategies. And it goes with our strategic plan. And I think that's going to be what is very different is we're going to be looking to see these changes that we make and what we are getting for that money. Do I mean, I'm, I don't want to spend more money, no one does, but we need to do that in order to achieve. And I see that, we're going in a really good place right now, and we're seeing improvements, with staff morale, with student morale, with parent morale. And now we're kind of going to the next level, and we're going to be looking for those changes with curriculum and seeing changes in student growth, and that's the next big piece, of, what the administrative team is recommending to us as professionals with doctorates and where we need to go. So, and I really appreciate that.
Any other board comments? Are we all?
Quick question. Does that 4.83 consist of New Fairfield at 5%, or are we still using 3% or Pat?
I
For
think we're
tuition
still
increase?
using the 3%, am I right, Ann?
Correct. 3%.
Okay. So just to bring to everybody's attention, if we can't do anything with the buses, that's going to go up to 5%. I don't see them, based on my last meeting that we had, I don't see that budgeting at all, to be honest with you. So hopefully we get some data back, but I'm also going to just ask, because I want you guys feedback, because if you're not a part of the meeting there is no recourse, right? I can't say no to 5%, can I?
Not really.
I mean,
We're
I
trying to
can, right? But-
negotiate. We're trying to negotiate. So we'll see
Exactly.
what happens at the next meeting.
Exactly. All right.
Okay, moving on from that, I do want to mention before we end here that for anybody who might be listening to this meeting later, or anybody who's on here, the next meeting will have an opportunity as a public forum for the budget for any questions or comments from the public on the budget before we vote to approve. So just putting that out there. And if there is nothing else from the board, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 7:03.